In this tutorial, we show you a strategy for completing your lab test and also the expectation we have over your submission. Basically, you want to make sure your submitted Java classes together with the JUnit test given to you altogether must compile. Okay, which means there should be no red underline in your projects. If you don't satisfy these requirements, you will get 0 marks for your lab test. Okay, let's illustrate how you can complete a strategy very easily. Okay, let's now assume that on the desktop we do have a example lab test archive file. This is something you will be given during the lab test. Let's see how you can import the project, and then we'll see how you can complete at least the minimum just to make sure at least your entire project compiles. Okay, let's go to Eclipse over here, and then you will go to File, Import, and then under General, let's go to Existing Projects into Workspace, and go to Next, and then select Archive File, and then Browse. And then we browse to, under Desktop, we go to Example Lab Test.zip, the archive file. Open, and over here you should see this project over here being checked, Example Lab Test. And then we say finished. And the example lab test project given to you initially is not expected to compile because let's look at that. So under the source folder, and then we have a package. And then if you double click on the example test, testpoints.java. So this is a JUnit test file that was given to you. And this one initially does not compile because you can see there's no other classes given to you, which means you have to read through the JUnit test as a documentation for what is expected for you to develop. Okay, for example, let's see over here for test number 1. This particular test method here, you can see the red underline goes to 2 places. This place over here, you can see we have this underline over here, and also we have this red underline over here. So these are the 2 places you have to fix in order to make at least this test case compile. Eventually, you want to make sure all the red underlines go away. That's something you have to make sure. Okay, so now we're going to show you how, a particular strategy of how you can do it. Okay, so first of all, just to make everything compile, this is what you should do. Okay, starting from the beginning of the first test, and then hold it, and then go to keep the cursor here, and then move all the way to the end. So test number 5. You might be given more tests during the actual lab test, but just as an illustration, hold the Shift key and then select. So select all the tests over here, and then click Command L. Oh, sorry. Let me do it again. So do Control/. It is going to comment out all the test cases. You can see now everything is commented out, so that means nothing is non-existing from the references. So now you can see the test points the Java compiles. But this is only going to work temporarily. But we haven't developed any classes yet. So what I would suggest right now is we're going to uncomment test by test, and then we're just going to fix piece by piece, so you can under a little bit less stress. Okay, so now for example, we're going to uncomment this particular test, so you can again go to Control/. Okay, it is going to comment that back. Okay, so now we put this back, and now we got 2 errors to fix. Okay, oh, by the way, eventually you must make sure you cannot simply say I fixed these 2 errors and then the whole thing compile and then I simply submit. That's not going to work. You have to make sure everything over here is restored back to the original what was originally given to you, and then make sure everything compiles, right? You cannot just comment out certain sections which you haven't completed and say my code compiles. That's not going to work. Okay, so now the first test over here, let's see how we can do just the minimum to make sure it compiles. So here's the principle. On the left hand side of the assignment, we are trying to declare a variable p of type points, and this apparently is a reference type. And reference type should correspond to the name of a class, and we don't have a class called point, so we should just so to fix this, we can create just a new class of name point. Okay, so that's number 1 principle you have to remember. Okay, principle number 1. So we can create a new class. So go to File, New, and go to Class over here, and then we're simply just going to create a new class, and then say Finish. Okay, as soon as we have done that, you can see that this error goes away. Okay, let me do it again. So this error goes away. So now the point class exists to be a type. But now the right hand side over here, you can see that we have another error. So every time when you see the new keyword, what goes after that is the constructor name. And then the constructor might take several, a list of arguments over here. So you can see that over here, we say new and then points. So that means we are lacking the constructor for the point class. And the constructor is expected to take one argument and second arguments. And both of them are of type integer. As you can see, there's no decimal point. Typically, you can assume if there's no decimal point for the numbers, they are simply just integers. Otherwise, they are double. Okay, just make it simple. Okay, so what we should do is we're going to declare a constructor over here. You can say, don't worry about attributes because we just do the minimum just to make sure everything compiles before you try to program your methods to make all the tests pass. Okay, so now we got public and then point, which will take two inputs over here. First is integer, second is also integer. So I will just say integer. You can put whatever name you like for the parameter name. I can say integer I, integer j, and then just empty body over here. Okay, so now let's go back over here, and this line now compiles. Okay, so now this line compiles, and then we're going to see the next two errors. Over here, you can see that p.getX. Let's figure out which class should we put into. So the context object for this method call is p. P was declared as type points. So we have to declare a method in the point class. And then, should the method be a mutator or accessor? So in this case, it should be accessor because you can see p.getX is actually stored for its return value into this particular variable x of type integer. So that tells you that so there should be a getX method which takes no parameter and they should return an integer. Okay, that's how you do the analysis. Okay, that's something you're expected to know, how to infer the API of the methods from their usage over here. So we should go to the point class over here, and then we should really declare a new accessor over there. So public returning an integer, because you can see we are using an integer variable to catch the return value. And then we say get x over here. Make sure you spell the name right. And then just empty. Okay. However, the problem is every time if you are specifying some return type that is not void, you must return something. Okay, I would suggest you just return default values for the int, which will be, you should say return 0, just some value over here. So at least it will compile. It is not correct, but at least it will compile, so you wouldn't get 0. Okay, let's go back here. So get x is done, and get y can be analyzed in the same way. Again, you can see p is a context object of type points. So get y should also appear in the same class. So let me just simply just copy and paste, have the same implementation and fix the name over here. So get x and get y. Let's go back to test points over here. So everything compiles, but let's not worry about whether this will pass the test. I'm pretty sure you wouldn't pass the test, but it's just for you to get things to compile. And by the way, you can see that over here we got one test that compiles, and the point class also compiles. If you simply just submit this as is, it wouldn't work, because even though everything just compile on this particular version here, but you can see all the other test cases will actually still in comments. So as soon as I uncomment them, things will not compile again. So that's exactly how we're going to grade you. So make sure before you submit, make sure all the test methods were uncommented, and that combined with your classes will compile. Okay. Okay, let's do similar reasoning for test number 2. Do that quickly. Okay, for test number 2, again, control /, and now we got simply just another new constructor, right? You can see the new keyword, and this constructor here, as opposed to the previous one takes 2 parameters, and this one here takes no parameter. So we gotta define that quickly. Okay, so we can simply put it here. You can say public points, and then no parameter, and then empty implementation. Okay, nothing to do. And then you can see that line over there now compile. Okay, and then you can see get x and get y. We have already done the declaration of the method, so we are safe now. What about set x and set y? So this indicates another kind of methods we have to define. As you can see, p.setX simply stands alone, which means we are just trying to modify the context object p. So in this case, you can assume it's going to be a mutator because there's no return value to be stored somewhere or to be made use of somewhere. So p is of type points, which means set x should go to the point class, and then you should take one argument value of type integer because there's no decimal point. And we'll do the same for set y as well. Let's do these two methods together, mutator method. So what I will do is I'll go public void set x, and then simply does nothing because the return type is simply void. So there's no need to return anything. And then we can say public void and set y, and then simply do nothing. And then we go back to test points. Over here you can see set x and set y, unless I spelled it wrongly. Okay, let's see. Oh, the reason that it doesn't compile was because you can see it takes one argument value. Don't forget about that. Okay, make sure you're faithful to exactly the name and also parameter list of the method for the mutator. Okay, go back to points over here. So we should say over here integer, let me say for example I. Okay, and then we can say also integer I, the right type. So now we go back there. So now test 2 also compiles. Okay, but we're gonna keep going until we uncomment all the tests and make sure they compile before we start developing the code further. Okay, again select test number 3, control /. Okay, you can see that again we got similar issue as before for the points. So now point collector is used as a type and it's a reference type, so that should correspond to a new class. So let's create a new class. File, new class, and then we go for point collector. Okay, and finish. Okay, it's a new point collector class over here. You can see this part now compiles. Okay, and then this is simply the default constructor. But I would suggest every time when you see the default constructor here, it might expect you to do something. So you better declare that as well. Okay, so let's just go to point collector over here. So you will say point collector public takes no arguments over here and does nothing just for now. You might implement something further once everything compiles. And then over here, so now this one here, you can see that PC is of type, the context object is of type point collector, which means get points method, which takes no arguments over here, should go into point collector class. And then should it be a mutator or accessor? In this case, it should be an accessor because you can see that over here, the method call is used as a value to be stored into the points variable, which is declared as of type point array, an array of points, which means this accessor get points should return an array of points. Okay, that's similar reasoning as before for the accessors. So now let's go back to point collector over here, and what we'll do is, first of all, the return type should be point array, like how we see over here, point array, and then the name of the method should be get points. Get points, and then takes no arguments. It is really important that you know that get points should really exist in the point collector class rather than points. Again, it is because the PC, the context object, is of type point collector. So that means get points should go into point collector class. And then because it has a return type over here, let's make it public. All the methods should be public. Only attributes should be private. And then for the get points, it returns something because as long as it's not primitive type, for which case you have to return the corresponding default values. But it's reference type, you can just say return no, just for now, just to get it compiled. Okay, let's go back to test point over here. Okay, now test 3 is okay. So now let's just go on and see uncommons test 4, control /. Okay, so now you can see that the next one that didn't compile was 45 and 46. You can see at points over here, the context object again, PC, is declared of type point collector. So at point method should go into point collector class, which takes an argument P1, and P1 was declared of type points. So the argument type should be of type point. Okay, now should it be a mutator or accessor? Again, you can see that this method here is stands alone. it is not used as an expression to be assigned to something else. So that should be a mutator. So what we should do is we should declare mutator in the point collector class, which takes a parameter of type point. Okay, that's what we should do. So let's go to point collector class, and then we declare mutator here. So we will say public void add point, which will take a parameter of type point. Let's just say p, and then it does nothing. Okay, so point collector class compiles, and test points test4 also compiles. Okay, so far so good. Okay, let's uncomment test5 finally. Uncomment that, and we still got more work to do. Okay, so now you can see that we got another method also called add points, but in this case you can see it takes 2 arguments as opposed to just 1 argument. What's the type of these 2 arguments? You can see 3 is an integer and 4 is also an integer. And where should this add point go to? Again, the context object is PC of type point collector, so it should also go to the point collector class. So go to point collector class, and then we'll simply add that mutator method. So we can say public void add points, and then over here you can say integer I and integer j, for example, and then it doesn't return anything, just void. And by the way, you can see the same the methods with the same name, but the list of parameters have different types. This is something called overloading in Java, which we covered already in the previous course. Okay, so now you can see that. So this is really the crucial points. You can see that after this initial processing of the test cases, you can see first of all, when we first began the lab test, nothing compiles. We got lots of compilation errors that will just give you 0 for your submission. So what we did was we simply comment out all the test methods so that everything just compiled to begin with, and then we uncomment one test method by another test method one by one, and then for each one of them we have to decide whether to create a new constructor, a new class, a new accessor method, or a mutator method. And based on the type of the context objects, we can decide where to put those methods, right? That's a quick summary of what we just did. Eventually, you can see that over here, you got exactly the 2 classes with the minimum methods over here, which have not been implemented yet, but that's okay. At least the methods and classes you have declared together with the original test cases given to you all together compile. So this will make sure you got some minimum marks for your lab test. You wouldn't get 0. Okay. Once we have done with this, let's try the following. Okay. You will simply just say test points, and then we'll say run as JUnit test. Okay, if you try that, you can see nothing passed, right? We simply got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all of them failed. That's simply because we only did the minimum just to make sure things compile, at least we can execute the tests. So now what you should do is, I will leave that as an exercise for you, is to fill in the necessary maybe attributes for points and necessary attributes for point collector, and then program the constructor and the accessor and mutator methods accordingly so that you can get a green bar from here. That will be an exercise for you. Okay, one more point to make. You'll realize something like this. Okay, let's say this. If for some reason, let me just do a very quick illustration to you. Okay, so now you can see that if somehow I didn't really define this properly, okay, let me just comment that out, and you can see that we do have a compilation error. Okay, but Eclipse does something weird for us. So now even though we do have a compilation error for the test cases, okay, you can see there's a cross mark over here. There's a red underline over here. So things do not compile. It does not meet our expectation on your submission. However, if you just do on Eclipse, if you say run as JUnit test, you can see that the JUnit test, it will ask you error exists in the required projects, proceed. JUnit actually give you the option to proceed, which is weird because things don't compile. But when you say proceed over here, they will still try to run your test cases. Okay, so don't assume we are going to do this for your submissions. So we are simply going to check to see if there's any cross marks, any red underline for your submission. That's the first check we do. If you don't even pass this first check, you get 0 for your submission. So that's why I'm showing you this simple strategy to make sure at least you get your code compiled. Let me give you a rationale why we wouldn't even run your test cases if you just get a small error like this. So today we are only using Eclipse. If you try to import your Java code to other tools like Android Studio or other IDEs, most likely when you got compilation error, the IDE will not be able to run your code. So that means Eclipse is really doing something very specific for you, and that's not universal. So we don't want you to rely on this. Okay, we want you to make sure every time you're given the test cases to work with, you gotta make sure at least all your solution together with the JUnit test can compile before we can run your test cases. Okay, do keep this in mind. Okay, let me just go back here and then put this back. So now everything compiles again. Okay, so now you can start your exercise to develop the rest so that rerunning the JUnit test will give you a green bar.